I did. Staycation type thing. It's recording. Oh, well, our friends. It is. It's like nature wonderland.
You gotta make you, I mean, make you repeat that all out.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can go ahead and ask.
It's not doing anything.
Again. Okay, I'm gonna do it from that.
So I changed it to speakers.
Nope, can't be speakers, gotta be, oh, yeah, is it the USB
Yeah,
loop back specifically?
yeah. So I did that and it doesn't work. But if I do this one, it does.
But that one's the one that you can't hear the people on Zoom, so it can't be that one, or we have issues.
How about this microphone to USB device?
That's right, perhaps, I
Yeah.
just wanna see, so first.
Let's see. Let's say microphone. Yeah.
So this is.
So now it's working. See.
Oh, yeah, microphone US, oh,
Yeah, that's.
microphone, yeah, microphone
Yeah.
to. Not speakers, that's actually.
Okay,
probably-
because I think that's what the mistake is here, is that we keep
No.
trying to make this work.
It needs to be speakers because what you're trying to do is what's playing out, not what's coming in, and the mic is only gonna pick up the mic. So that's why it can't be microphone. How come we can't even do that?
Because it's already, I think, picked. That doesn't work.
Microphone channel 1, and it's working. So yeah, it's supposed to be, no, not microphone.
It's supposed to be the speakers to USB.
And
No, is it? But that's the real back one.
oh. Speakers.
Yeah, that.
It is with pink, not green, right?
It's been.
Let's just hit green real quick.
All right, what was that? Water. You know, I'm missing something. We don't have a coat rack anywhere, do we?
I'm wondering.
No,
Okay.
but you're welcome to put it on one of those chairs over there.
Well, shall I do that? I just, I don't want to clutter things up, but on the other hand,
Check. Yeah, but Sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
We might need to dedicate some time to sit down and redo all this. I think something's changed and I don't know what. It's been a constant, some speakers, USB loop back. This one being a loop back might be okay because it's still a speaker. So as long as if the computer for some reason is trying to play back. And it is currently set to use this Realtek. And then we're gonna make this match what the computer's trying to use, Realtek.
Then it-
And I'll do this, which is hitting Zoom, which is coming through.
Yeah,
So this should be fine.
okay,
So this should work.
okay.
We might, do we have anyone remote on Zoom today?
No,
So it'll definitely work. We'll be fine for today. We probably want to schedule some time and test that with a remote Zoom person or a mimic remote Zoom person to make
Okay.
sure we're not wrong. But this one's probably. gonna be okay. For some reason, this computer likes to use that even when you set it to this. It's,
yeah.
remember how it was still using this and still playing back through that? I
Yeah.
don't know why.
Hmm.
This computer might have some sort of alternate issue that we have to address too.
We all have.
Especially that computer.
Thank you.
I'd leave it just like that for now.
I will. Thanks.
Going.
Yes.
Okay.
We're on. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, I will call to order the Cottonwood Heights City Council meeting, our work session at 4 p.m. on Tuesday, January 3rd. For those listening or otherwise interested, I'm Scott Bracken. I'm the mayor pro tem. The mayor is apparently someplace sunny. I don't know, but he is excused for tonight's meeting. First item on our agenda is to review the items in our business meeting. So we will have, we'll do a welcome, do the Pledge of Allegiance. I had not asked anyone to do that yet. Tim, would you be willing to do that? Sure. Okay, well, hopefully I'll remember that all the way till 7 o'clock.
Okay.
We have
We're on.
2 items for public comments that we will listen to. One is the current revision of the sensitive lands and development standards ordinance SLEDs. That's on our work session, so we'll go over that a little bit here. Maybe have Mike, if you'll have a short explanation of what that is. I expect anybody who may be commenting is already aware. But the other one is the amendment that was needed for our moderate income and affordable housing plan that's to match
The other.
the
It's on the,
verbiage that the state
on the P one.
required from the change in legislation.
Some very technical changes needed from the state. And I've got those slides again. I can introduce that public comment with.
Okay. We have staff reports, the police report, chief, you're going to do that tonight?
I am.
Okay.
Oh, I had to leave the room so she can organize it for me.
Well, that's good. And then we will have a public works report from that ship. Action items. We have the first item is a resolution approving an interlocal agreement for the UPDES media campaign. This is a renewal. We've done this for quite a few years. Tim, you want to explain that for anyone listening? And
so it's a 5-year renewal. We do it every 5 years. It's an interlocal with Salt Lake County. There's a cost of a little over $5,000 per year that has been budgeted for a number of years. And it's as part of it is really the public information campaign as part of our discharge, the pollutant and discharge elimination system. So that's basically what it is. So this is a renewal of another 5 years to be part of this program.
And that is a requirement for our clean water, EPA, some of the other
Correct.
things that we need to do.
Correct.
Item 6.2, resolution 2023-02 is assuming that we don't hear anything significant in the public comment on the affordable housing plan. That's just to approve those technical changes so that we can send it back to the state and be in compliance with our reporting. Item 3 is item 6.3 and 6.4 are appointments to city committees, one to the Arts Council and another to the Planning Commission. Does anyone have any questions on that? Was it Susie G
Yeah, so there's 2 and Christina on the Arts Council.
Lomel?
Lamont, yeah.
Okay,
And then Mike Smith on the Planning Commission.
okay. And then the meetings are okay for December. We follow step down. Anybody have any comments on those? December happened. It's over now.
Did.
Okay. With that, let's take some time. Riley, I promise we're gonna get to you,
Ready.
one way or the other.
Yeah.
We have to stay till midnight. That's not happening. Anyway,
Yeah, let's
let's
not do that.
start with our sustainability master plan. Is there, I get there's find a seat or come up and do.
We are a team of two today. Is there a good spot for us to both tuck in up here? We can maybe grab an extra chair. Oh, spot. Thank you so much. So this is a brief update. I'm not sure if everyone knows Andy Polka, our former senior planner, has moved on to Salt Lake City. He's working for Salt Lake City in the Inland Port Authority kind of sector. So I filled the senior planner position and we've hired Ian Harris, who's our new associate planner and sustainability analyst. Ian comes from the University of Utah. We actually went to school together. So it's great to have him and nice to introduce you to him.
Yeah, good to be here.
So we are here today to just have kind of an informal discussion on potential sustainability projects for the year ahead. We have brand new year here, and we would love to hear some feedback at the beginning of this year from the council on the direction you'd like us to go with sustainability projects. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Let's just make sure we get that going. It's nice to be in a meeting where I can make sure it's shared, unlike all online where you never know. And then I'm just going to drag that out of the way. Okay. So to kick things off, I just wanted to give recognition to the sustainability projects that the council has already completed. This council and the council prior did a lot of great work so far on sustainability. These are some of the more significant projects that are completed to date. I think that's excellent work, and we're grateful to be coming from a position of having done, I think, a lot of good things already as a city. Also wanted to just give kind of a brief update on some ongoing projects. These are projects that are either kind of currently happening or yeah, maybe a longer term where they're just still happening. The first one is the Community Renewable Energy Program. You hear it sometimes referred to as CREP or House Bill 411, because that's the House bill it originated out of in the 2019 legislative session. This, as a reminder, is a partnership between 18 Utah communities, including Cottonwood Heights and Mountain Power, just working together to set up the option of net renewable electricity for Utahns. It involves a lot of back-end collaboration with getting the new utility rate set up. It's a lot of state regulation. So it's kind of been behind the scenes work for the last year or so. But we are currently collaborating as one of the 18 communities on the program application. This is a single application that we make to the state regulators. Has rate projections, low income assistance details, and a utility agreement that goes through some technical details. Just mentioning this now to sort of give you a little bit of context for when this comes back to the council. We anticipate bringing it to you all in summer of 2023 for action and for a more detailed discussion. To officially bring the rate as an option to Cottonwood Heights, the city council would need to adopt an ordinance that adopts that rate here. Every ratepayer will have the option to stay on their standard offer electricity if they don't want to be a part of this. We anticipate the cost impact from the projections we've seen so far to be about $7 more for households that participate. But we'll talk more about that as it comes back to the council. Just wanted to mention that's ongoing. That's kind of one of our bigger projects. We've also been working on a bike lane project on Fort Union Boulevard that we're really excited about. This utilizes corridor preservation funding from the county and also ATIP or Active Transportation Investment funding from WFRC. We got funding to connect the bike lane segments that are on Fort Union Boulevard. So if you've driven by the new townhomes that are on Fort Union, I think it's 23 Views and Union Lofts, you'll notice directly in front of those developments, there is a nice bike lane, a wider sidewalk, a buffered bike lane. The funding we received will allow us to connect those two projects so that they're no longer interrupted. So we're working on that. We've just commissioned a firm, Civil Science, to get going on the design of that bike lane, and I'm excited about that. Working on the Big Cottonwood Trail or Big Cottonwood Canyon Trail wayfinding. We're using track funding through the county to improve the wayfinding along the Big Cottonwood Trail. This is a super heavily used trail, as I'm sure you all know. So we're updating it with map signs, wayfinding signs, and trail markers to improve active transportation in that area. Also working on a donation program to help fund amenities for the Ferguson Park Natural Park and Trailhead. Working on a pollinator garden master plan for Mount View Park so that in the future, as funding may come available, we can look at continuing to add more pollinator plants to that entry hillside in Mount View Park that has some spaces.
May I ask a question?
Sure, yeah.
So I was reading back through the 2019 sustainability initiative, and it talked about I believe it was a food forest. And I just wondered, is the pollinator garden kind of in place of doing some kind of food forest, or can you talk about
Was
that?
that the renewable energy resolution that you were referring to, the
I think so.
2019 resolution?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, that was actually adopted before I started with the city, so I don't know the intention in including that verbiage. I think that would definitely get at it, providing pollinator support throughout the city. I think I haven't actually heard the term food forest before, but it could also be used to support food access throughout the city. Focus on.
I mean, I really support the idea of within many of our parks doing community gardens and doing more of these things like the pollinator garden. So I'm thrilled to hear that is
Great.
being moved forward.
Yeah, I think you'll see some more of that kind of type of initiative tonight in our presentation. So that's great to know that that's something you're interested in. And then the last thing we've been working on kind of as an ongoing effort is just relocating our glass recycling bin. We have a Wasatch Front Waste and Recycling District large glass depository outside the Public Works Yard on 30th East. As part of the redesign of that building, or I guess the addition of a building at all there, we'll just need to find a new place for that glass recycling because the site's being reworked. So we are working with community partners and Wasatch Front to find a good fit for that. We've had a lot of really promising discussions where we'll be relocating that to make sure we still offer glass recycling in the community. So those are sort of the ongoing projects, just to set the context maybe for where we go next. So this begs the question of where do we go next? We've done all this great work. How do we decide what to do now? And maybe more so, how do we scale from just talking about projects and brainstorming them to actually implementing them and seeing those completed and supporting our community? So we are recommending as staff to implement projects beyond just the brainstorming stage, to sort of take a scaled approach. So if we look here at the screen, we see kind of a series of rungs. The largest one at the top is our interlocal sustainability action plan. That's our overarching kind of guiding document. This was adopted in summer of 2021, and it just provides really general sustainability strategies and policies, really high level, but it's kind of that overarching master plan. Then if we kind of dial in one more rung, getting more specific, we have today's city council meeting. So at today's meeting, we are going to be providing you with some sort of potential projects you might be considering for 2023. We move one more rung down, getting even more specific. We recommend that the council discuss this further at their retreat in 2023 to determine internally maybe what projects are priorities for the council. And then finally, we get to the bottom rung here with the most specific item of implementing these projects, the fun part, right, where we get to do these projects and see the benefits to the community. And that's where we will begin working on the projects prioritized by you all. So that's the recommended action or course of action we're kind of presenting tonight, just continually refining our focus, but all from that master plan level that's been adopted. So we're going to now share 10 kind of potential sustainability projects that the council can contemplate as you all talk about legislative priorities. We're just going to run through these slides pretty quickly. We'll leave plenty of time for questions at the end. And then again, we recommend that you talk about it at your retreat and kind of provide us feedback from that retreat on where to go next. So I will also note Ian did a lot of the heavy lifting with coming up with these ideas. So if you want to jump in at any point, just please feel free to do so. So our first kind of potential project idea is to protect and enhance the tree canopy. On each slide here, I have what's listed as ISAP reference. That's the Interlocal Sustainability Action Plan reference. I'm not going to read these, but these are just basically explaining how this project is supported by the plan that the council adopted. How does it tie in to the master plan? So that's what you'll see at the top of each of these slides. Why this? Why are we recommending protecting and enhancing the tree canopy? Tree canopies are a really valuable tool in arid or semi-arid climates. They provide shade, they can cool nearby people, mitigate urban heat island effect, and as we all know, also add a lot of placemaking to our community, a lot of beauty and sense of place. So some potential ideas of what a project in this category could look like. This could be facilitating a tree planting initiative, increasing community outreach about tree maintenance, considering sponsorship of tree bags. You may have seen them in other cities around the valley, where you basically have a bag around the trunk of trees and park strips that just targets watering to that tree, so you make sure it's receiving ample support. Or creating a tree inventory to research the health and condition of our urban forest. That's our first idea. Our next idea is to enhance sustainable city landscaping. Green lawns are great as active spaces. They can be really beautiful, but they are pretty inefficient and definitely not pollinator friendly. So we see the city as having great potential to kind of demonstrate that alternative landscapes can be really beautiful. They can be easy to implement. We have a good amount of sort of public view that we can kind of show that if it's something the council is interested in. So this could look like facilitating, implementation of water-wise and pollinator-friendly species in public-owned properties like public-owned park strips, plazas, parks, continuing community outreach and education on different landscaping types. We hosted a class last spring on water-wise park strips that was just really well attended and I think really well received. So there's a lot of room to sort of continue on that facet of just giving people resources. And then also just continuing encouragement of sustainable landscapes for both residential and commercial projects. So our next idea is to enhance water conservation initiatives. So we're continuing to see precipitation declining and temperatures rising in Utah, as well as kind of the Intermountain West. We see water conservation as a crucial response to that. We see that at the legislature as well, kind of in response to the water picture in the West. And we see that even apart from landscaping initiatives that we've just chatted about, there are other opportunities for the city to promote responsible water use and water conservation. So this could entail sponsoring a rain barrel program where folks are able to collect rain from storms throughout the spring, increasing city outreach and education about ways to cut water in partnership with our water providers. The city, as I'm sure City Council is all aware, works mainly with Salt Lake City Public Utilities to provide our waters. We always want to make sure any messaging we're doing on water is in coordination with them since they are the water provider. This could also entail retrofitting city facilities and grounds with water saving technologies, appliances, sprinklers, sinks, fountains. There's a lot of good options on the market for that. Moving right along, our next project idea is to support EV or electric vehicle adoption throughout the city. We continue to see auto markets kind of diversifying beyond internal combustion engines, so the city can help plan for the future by encouraging or streamlining EV infrastructure and adoption. We've brainstormed that this could include designating authority for approval bodies to maybe consider reasonable development incentives if EV compatible stalls are provided in developments. We could explore options for requiring EV chargers based on square footage ratios. And also publicize information on available EV grants. There's a lot of opportunities out there for private sector businesses to receive funding to do EVs. That's not necessarily something we can take advantage of as a tax exempt entity, but private sector businesses certainly could. Our next item is sort of a broad one. We're recommending here encouraging active transportation. We see active transportation as a really beneficial topic. It's great for, it's more affordable than a lot of rail transit or new road projects. It also promotes a lot of public health and sense of place. So it can be a really multifaceted tool to have in a city's tool belt. We also see a clear desire from residents, I think, for more transportation options, with active transportation playing a role in our very active kind of outdoor oriented community. So this could look like implementing a scalable bike parking requirement for commercial projects, maybe testing out removable or convertible street infrastructure near schools, And then also looking into codifying minimum pedestrian crossing intervals on streets to encourage walkability. Moving on, next project recommendation is to boost sustainability outreach. This is maybe one of the most like low-hanging options, but also one of the strongest or most transformative ones. We see a lot of folks in the city really supportive of sustainability, but maybe a little unsure of how to get involved or what to change in their day-to-day. So increased education can just really support people in knowing how to help or how to be engaged. This could include holding events to showcase different sustainability programs, updating the city website with some better information on recycling and kind of how to dispose of tricky to recycle materials, creating PSA type videos on how to incorporate sustainability, providing more information on LEED certification for the builders in our city, and then also just including a monthly sustainability feature. We've been so grateful to be able to kind of share recurring sustainability information, but we've tended to do it more on like a quarterly basis in the newsletter. So having maybe a more regular feature could help provide our community with more information. Okay, we're getting kind of to the end here. Thanks for hanging in with me. Our next option here is to encourage sustainable commutes. So I think all of our employees, anecdotally, I would say all of the employees right now drive private automobiles. I drive my car to work every day and am pretty unfamiliar with my transit options to do that differently. Maybe we could look at making alternative transportation options more available to employees, just to help encourage that. So this could entail offering an opt-in transit reimbursement program through UTA for city employees who are interested, installing covered or indoor bike parking at City Hall, or continuing to collaborate with UTA to improve transit facilities. All could maybe help folks consider alternative commutes if that's something they're interested in. And then getting to this one, which Councilmember Burrell, this may kind of address some of what you were bringing up, looking at just sustainable food initiatives. So we have a lot of food waste worldwide, and at the same time, a lot of food insecurity for people struggling to find food in their community. So there's options to sort of link those two and address both of those through hosting a non-perishable food drive at our city facilities, maybe looking at opportunities for city-sponsored community gardens or herb gardens. That's a really popular one in other communities. Exploring local food pantry offerings, and then hosting some outreach or webinars, seminars on composting and food waste, just to help folks kind of understand that more. On a similar kind of token of reducing waste, this one looks at reducing fuel waste. So specifically looking at reducing fuel waste from vehicles, from idling. A lot of newer cars have that auto off feature where your car will turn off if you are waiting at a stoplight, but other cars do not. If it's an older model, it probably won't. And so a project of this type could look at requiring anti-idling signage in new development, including drive-throughs, pickup stalls, drop-off zones, providing anti-idling decal recognition to any businesses who are maybe working on reducing idling at their property, and working with Public Works to identify future roundabout opportunities that would reduce vehicular idling at our lights if possible. And then I think this one may be the end. Yeah, we're right down to it. This one just looks at sustainable waste management broadly. So this one hopes to sort of lead by example by improving our waste management here at City Hall. This could entail removing our single-use plastics when possible, or maybe reusable options at City Hall, maybe sponsoring a highway cleanup to help tackle some of the litter we see on our busier streets, streamlining our landfill glass plastic paper sorters at city facilities so that we have more options for recycling the things we use here. And then also just coordinating with our city's kind of facilities management group. We have a great group who helps us take care of our building. But coordinating with them to make sure we're following kind of proper recycling techniques as we take care of our building. So those are the list of ideas. It's 10 pretty broad projects with sort of some examples of what it could look like in each. I just want to remind or kind of point us back to this sort of loose timeline. So we see a check mark now. We've had a discussion here at our January 3rd city council meeting, just sort of introducing these projects, letting you know some of the ideas we've brainstormed. The little star on the next one just kind of denotes we're hoping, if it's appropriate with your time and with your bandwidth at the retreat, to maybe recommend that you discuss this further. The list that we just discussed was included in your memo, and we can also make sure it's transmitted through the city manager if it's something the council wants to talk about at the retreat.
I was just gonna say, I did not. Did I just miss it in the memo? It was sent out with the packet?
Yeah, it was in there.
I
We
just-
can
I just
definitely
missed it then.
send it again, not a problem. Want to make
Yeah.
sure you have the resources to discuss further, but I know there's a lot of different directions sustainability can go, and so I think taking some time to discuss internally amongst council members would probably be helpful, and then just letting us know where do you want us to focus our time. We're so excited to get working on new projects, and we'll basically, once we hear from you on what priorities are, begin working on implementation and come back to council as needed for those projects if the budget requires or other bandwidth. So
So maybe ask Ian, because I'm guessing that's gonna be in his wheelhouse now. Maybe go through some of those with a couple of ideas and even put some ranges, you know. This one's a nominal cost, this one's, significantly more, just so we have an idea of kind of.
yeah, definitely. So I'll just share we had this conversation with Holiday and Mill Creek over the summer. And what we did there was just sort of the same flow. So we had this introductory conversation. They kind of discussed internally as a council at their other work sessions or their retreat. And then they got back to us with sort of like, here's the list we're interested in. And then we responded with, here are estimated costs and time impacts.
Okay.
So we could definitely do that if that's something you want to do. We just want to know what you're interested in most. Where do you want us to focus our time? So we hope to hear from you on that and get going.
Is the interlocal with Mill Creek and Holiday still in place there? Are we still?
This is all the formal collaboration. We anticipate still working with them as opportunities arise, since we're all so close. But the intention of that interlocal was to really kind of get a sustainability plan up and running, to get everyone in a direction to be supported in sustainability. With the sustainability action plan in place for all three having been adopted, it has transitioned into project management, and that, just for bandwidth reasons, kind of needed to be done in-house by each with implementing the projects and being on site.
Even though
Yes.
it's called the interlocal plan, we still have it adopted
Yes,
as our plan.
it still applies to all three cities.
So if I'm,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
Well, I was just to Councilman Bracken's point. I'd be real interested, if Mill Creek and Holiday are also interested in similar things, instead of everybody building a new wheel. This might be a cost-effective way to figure out where we align with these other cities. And as far as staff goes, build some of these programs, since we have similar cities located in a similar area. As opposed to, again, because, I can't imagine anybody at the table who isn't listening to the, 5 or 6 things within each of the 10 of these going, wow, it sounds great. But I think that realistically, we need to understand, what can be to do as much as we can, but by sharing resources, perhaps,
Sure.
Do you think continuing interlocal is something to discuss?
So I can respond to that.
Yeah.
So we could definitely discuss it a little bit more, but just from my conversations, when we started this out with the interlocal agreement, the purpose, one of the primary purposes, was to develop a plan and collaboratively, which we have done with those other communities, and identified goals and objectives to move forward. And then once we did that, and we did that very collaboratively, they had indicated their interest in moving forward on their own, both cities as well as us. And so that's what basically ended that component. We felt like we got to the point where we worked collaboratively on these goals and objectives. And now the implementation is by city. And so that's where
Some of
we're
that
at.
collaboration was funding.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just note, it kind of a handoff conversation with the other 2 cities where we said like, hey, anything else before we wrap up the interlocal? There was an understanding and an agreement like, hey, if anyone's ever working on a project where we think it might apply regionally, let's keep communication open so that we can collaborate. and say, hey, we're doing a waste management seminar and we're gonna open it up so everyone's available, or we're gonna put together an active transportation fair. We want everyone to come to it. So I think there will absolutely still be that collaboration and opportunity. We still have really open dialogue with the other two cities. But the interlocal itself was, had kind of reached a point where it was ready to transition into project management in-house for each community with their own staff. So.
Sean, you had a.
Yeah, well, I was actually waving to Paula about. No, but I back.
Share this is an auction. You just purchased.
I know, it's only $1 million. But I think these are some great initiatives. Growing up in Southern California, my city actually has a program, a tree canopy program, where they provide a free tree to every resident each year.
Cool.
And so if there's damages, which allows them also to control what type of foliage is going into the street strips and so forth, which is something that's really nice to do. Here in Utah, I could see us having those drought tolerant trees, lining park strips, and I was one that did that as well. The EV adoption throughout the city, I think, is going to become really important. Now, these things all cost us money. I know that. But I know that it also creates an opportunity. I don't. I just bought $1 million painting.
Auction.
Yes. I'm keeping my hands to myself. But I think it also gives us some opportunities when we look at commercial opportunities.
Yeah.
Because if you have these charging stations in places where there's commerce,
Right.
It'll afford us those opportunities to be able to take advantage of that. So I think, the further investigation and where some of these things will fit, I think is really important for us to look at here for the future.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Obviously, with most any of these things, there's going to be some capital required to make it happen. So that's really where we need your leadership to help us understand what you want to prioritize so that we can make that happen. So I do think Mayor Pro Tem Grafton made a good point of, if the council wants to maybe refine sort of a shorter list of projects from what we've presented that you're really interested in, we could respond to that with some more research on cost implication and time. And also, I just wanted to mention too, if there are other projects that you all have on your minds that weren't included on this list, we would love to, have you guys discuss that at your retreat and give us that direction too. We kind of racked our brains for this first iteration of it, but
There's certainly a lot there. Do you have anything?
super open to.
I have a question, and
Yeah.
it's kind of related to this, but
Okay.
the solar panels that we now have on our
Yes.
building, do we have any kind of monitoring of how those are doing, the efficiency and things?
We do. We actually have it on our website. We have a live link. It's called, I think, Solar Edge is the company that does it. We have it projected on our TV screens in the foyer. It sometimes goes down, admittedly, like sometimes you walk
It's
by.
not running full power today?
Yeah, the sun's not on this year, and solar kind of needs sun. But we have that posted online. I could send the council the link if you ever want to check
I'd
in
love
on
to
it.
see that.
And then I'm also looking forward to just seeing our bills, kind of seeing the impact over time. So the live monitoring is pretty cool, though.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Well, I would just like to say that I would like to add that I'm really thrilled with the list. There's a lot of good qualities in there. I will say that in definition of sustainability, it's the financial as well as environmental well-being for the city. And so the missing major component that from this list is looking at our asphalt footprint of our city. We know that asphalting contributes to many problems in our air shed, our storm drains, and many other things. And so it would definitely be one of the biggest ticket items should we want to really do an audit and think about, again, financial sustainability for a city. My understanding is that most of these master plans are looking out to 2050.
Sure.
And so that would be something I would urge the council to want to add to this list of very important
Great.
sustainability items.
Great point to bring up. If that's something the council prioritizes, we'd be happy to work in conjunction with Public Works. We have a lot of great collaborators here at City Hall. So yeah, thank you for giving us.
So you won't be back with us. It'll be in next time.
Yeah, we're not scheduled to. We're happy to support your other ones. Happy to bring another option to the table for councilmember renewal to bid on. But Happy New Year. Thank you for having us. We're really looking forward to accomplishing some great projects with you all in 2023. And we'll just plan to kind of coordinate through Tim on next steps for y'all's discussions.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Johnson, you want to give us a brief overview on, I suspect most of what happened with sleds, we ought to be aware of.
Yes.
We're gonna have a public comment period on it.
Yeah, thank you. I will plan to give, well, it's up to you, but a brief introduction in the, before the public comment. I won't read through it here, but just, you've seen this already, but just the background and timeline and a very high level overview of what it is. I'm not going to go through every chapter like I did with the council here. But what it is, where the recommendations came from, where it's been today, things like that. The one thing I wanted to bring up here is a new version of this was published this morning. This was based on some feedback that was received based on the DRC procedure section, which is the section of the ordinance that governs pre-scoping meetings and land disturbance permits, and basically the authorization of work that has to occur to figure out if development can occur. So if we, the city, know or suspect that there are hazards on a site that is trying to be developed, there's this section of the ordinance that says, okay, when a hazard is suspected before any development is approved, they have to go through this, what we call pre-scoping process. So they have to identify what the hazard is, identify how they're going to study it, submit a work plan, submit a revegetation plan, potentially bond, do survey and staking and things like that. That's all in the ordinance already. We have added some, what I would call minor clarifications, but helpful clarifications based on some public comments we received from some residents to further help refine this procedure section. And they're summarized here. They're in detail.
I know that there's some add minutes and have that type of fact debatable.
Yep. So the one there is for any pre-scoping meetings that are held. One that the DRC has an internal kind of policy for how to follow that. The staff right now is great. We follow the procedure really well. It's codified pretty well, but we want that procedure to be, further clarified in a policy document that can be used, as staff turns over and as things change, and then be updated from time to time as is necessary. Another one, as you just mentioned, is a requirement for summary notes or minutes or recording, some kind of notes kept from these pre-scoping meetings, so it's clear what was discussed and what direction was given. The ordinance then goes on to talk about the submittal of a concept plan and what's required, and that's all really good. But throughout it, we've basically further clarified that the DRC is the approval authority for the pre-scoping studies. There's some sections in there that said the department or the director and things like that. We've cut all of those out. It's all the DRC. So there's no questions as to who the authority is. Everything has to run through the DRC through this procedure, pre-scoping land disturbance process. Those are the only changes that have been made. And that was just uploaded on the city website today. So
any further questions before we'll take public comment?
Yeah, schedule for public comment. And again, from there, it's up to the council on what to do with it.
Yeah, let's see. This one was not on.
Not on for action, no.
It was the other one that was on.
Yeah,
for
the housing
action.
plan.
Okay.
But if I may add, we want to make sure the council's comfortable with everything. So we're not trying to push this forward as quickly as we would want to. We want to make sure you're comfortable with it. We've taken a lot of time to go over it. Mike has met with a number of residents on this.
There were some concerns there, and it sounds like we've got most of them worked out.
Again, as I said last time, I don't want to speak for
address
the
or
residents.
talk
I haven't heard for a while based on the changes we've made. They've been distributed to people that have asked. They're on the website. They've been discussed in these meetings. I haven't heard anything.
Were you on staff when we did the initial approval of sleds, or is that before your time?
There was an update in 2015 or 16. I was here, but I wasn't involved in it.
This sleds was a heavy lift to improve what was going on in our sensitive lands from what we had. The old FCAUS that the county was just not up to snuff. And so it's good to keep this up and keep it current because things do change. So
And so what will be the process after the council votes on this? Then how long will it take to have it be our new?
As soon as you vote, it's effective.
I would like to urge our council members to advance this if they are feeling comfortable as soon as possible, because this does protect our sensitive lands. And I know I can go on record to say I feel very comfortable with it, and I'd like to understand where each of the council members are, and if we are feeling good about it. I think we shouldn't let time go by, because we do want to get this protecting our lands and our residents.
well, the one who sets that agenda is not in the snow, but we could certainly, I think you've done a great job. I think we've had the discussion. I would be favor to putting it on an agenda soon to get it for formal approval.
Depending on what happens with the public hearing in a
The
couple of hours.
It's always contingent upon someone coming in and throwing a wrench in. But if that doesn't happen, I think it's.
I don't know if I'd call it a wrench, I just think clarification, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you never know. Someone they come in, and if there's something that needs to be studied, then we'll take the time to study it. But so far, I think what you've done has been great, and we've taken that time because we did get some communication early that wait, this doesn't work.
We
So
could,
we put the wrenches away.
after the hearing today, we could easily have it tentatively scheduled for the January 17th meeting for consideration. So
So
that
maybe pass that on to the mayor.
Yeah.
Unless unless we get something else.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, next is, transportation master plan. Matt, you ready? Or do you want me to make Riley go first?
No. Oh, wow. You gave me up already. Adam is here. We're gonna discuss that. He's found his way to that. Yeah, we'll have Adam do that, but what we're doing is we're bringing, this is the transportation master plan. Y'all saw back in November, where we presented it, the initial findings and asked for comments, and we're back now to answer any questions that the council may have. And we'd like to move this thing forward. And so we're opening it up to you as a council. If you have any questions or comments that we need to address, we'll take these notes and get those addressed and bring them back.
Does this go into is this a component of the general plan?
This is a standalone. The general plan has a transportation element,
Okay,
which is different than the master plan. The element is the real high overall view. The master plan brings it down to a tighter level.
May I add something related to that? So with this plan, and if you've had a chance to review it, one of the things that is included in it is something very substantial related to active transportation. That's one of the objectives, and there's a pretty significant component of that from page 25 on, which I have not really seen the detail or the proposals in a transportation master plan like we have within this with the active transportation. So I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that.
So this is a new transportation plan draft from what we had before.
No, it is the same one. We haven't made any changes yet.
from the November presentation.
From November, October, yeah, it was October 28th, and then November 1st, I think, was when the meeting was. And so we're looking for feedback from city council. Councilmember Burrell sent an email that we'll take a look at, and thank you for giving us some comments. So what we're looking for is for the council to give feedback and direction of what if you have any comments on the plan, if you'd like to see changes to the projects. The meat of the plan is you've got these cross sections for the roadways. all the roads from the arterials to the collectors, there are proposed cross sections that show bike lanes, they show the widths of the road, depending on it, that's gonna be an important thing moving forward. And there's also a list of proposed projects as well it's at the beginning of the report on page 5. That shows intersections and roadways that are proposed changes to those roads. Part of transportation master plans are to incorporate other plans as well. So we have the active transportation plan projects. Those are included in that.
They're in this document?
In this document, the projects from the active transportation plan are in this document.
Okay.
And then this is kind of a living document. You can include, future plans as well. For your retreat, we're going to be recommending that we do a traffic calming and sidewalk plan for the entire city. And so that would be, that could include aspects like crosswalks, gaps in sidewalks, things of that nature, and then include that in this plan as well. Because this isn't necessarily a static plan, it can be a dynamic one, but what we're looking for is kind of the direction from the council, whether you're happy with the structure of this plan, if you'd like to see changes to the projects, to the cross sections, the population that was used. There was a discussion about that, and we can answer questions.
There's some things there. So
To recap on the population comes from Wasatch Front developed a population model that goes out to 2050.
the Wasatch Front Regional
Wasatch Front Regional Council developed it's called the TAS model. And essentially what that is it shows the employment areas and the residential areas. So you have your residential traffic, and then you also have your commuter traffic on top of that. And that's the population that's shown on that graph. And what we had our Horrocks do, who was the consultant that we used that TAS model. And then the other thing we added to it was the gravel pit master plan that was adopted by the city a few years ago. And in that plan, there was a density for the gravel pits. So we took that and we added that to the model. Other than that, that's what it is. And then from
population, so
that's the population on
that rings to me to be people living there, and that's where it gets.
Yeah, and that's why I've said we'd like you to give us your feedback. We can certainly change, make it more clear. So it doesn't say Cottonwood Heights population, it's more of
and maybe I should. Did you have a pre-explanation that you wanted to do us, or are you just fine with us diving right in?
No, we don't have anything. I don't have anything specifically prepared. This was just
all right.
Because
we just I started in with questions already.
Yeah, I wasn't sure exactly what, because at some point we need to get comments from the council, and then we'll go back and modify the plan, bring it back to you guys as a second draft. And then at some point, the council would move forward with a product they're happy with. And then that would go to city comment and then adoption, or public comment, excuse me, and then adoption. So,
I mean, I know I have talked earlier with Councilmember Burrell and briefly with Doug. I do like, just.
That's okay. I feel the fire.
But on that projection, that's just something we need to work at and see if it works. Because it just doesn't.
Well,
And
the
we don't
reason that it seems
seem-
a little
Right.
strange to me is there was also, I believe, those same numbers and projection on population that our economic development department has put forward with the general plan, which I know the mayor and I objected related to the general plan. So to see it then appear in the transportation plan, I haven't put them side by side, but they seem to be identical. So I know, I don't know if I may go ahead and give my comments. you know, my key challenge with our 5-year transportation plan, which does project out the needs and such for all the way through 2050, is that I want to see this based on safety first, as opposed to the current emphasis, which is on basically motorist convenience, things like traffic flow and level of service. And so in keeping with the SS4A program, Systems for All, I think we have a real opportunity in our city to not only acquire federal funds that are we're hoping become available. I know the WFRC is applying to get funding from the federal government. And I want to see our city positioned to acquire as much of that as we can. So.
And this is the safety action plan.
We would need.
You would need a safety action plan, yeah. And just to give you some insight on that, the Wasatch Front is applying for a grant to complete a safety action plan for Salt Lake County. And that is.
They want to do one for
They
everywhere.
They do.
Okay.
The money that's going to be available from this federal stimulus is tied to reducing fatalities from areas that are dangerous, right, for traffic. So and it's a very specific, very, you know, the federal process is
it strictly traffic, or is it all modes of transportation?
I think it's all modes. I honestly, I'm not prepared to give a presentation on, but I do know that it's to get the funding, you have to have this plan, and to do the plan is it's approved by federal highways. So the Wasatch Front is going and doing it for Salt Lake County and all the cities. Matt is on the committee that is doing that, and we are going to move forward with them and all the other cities, and that will be the first step to then. The second round would then be the projects themselves.
Yeah, I guess my point is I want to make sure that we are aligning with that kind of thinking. We've
For safety,
certainly
yes.
For safety for all users. We found that is a primary concern of our residents. We found that out from our survey this year. They want walkability, which infers rideability, you know, human powered ability to get around, to have you know, higher levels of transit, access to transit. So I want to make sure that our transportation plan reflects what our constituents are wanting. As I've spoken with my council colleagues, of course, the funding and the costs associated with doing serious improvements within Cottonwood Heights that can make our city more walkable and our dangerous places safer is going to take you know, considerable work. But I would really like to see that in our 5-year transportation plan. I also, in analyzing the 3-phased timeframes where the projects are listed in roughly 10-year increments between now and 2050, I would object and oppose many of those projects because they are basically adding more cars to our road. They're very car-centric. You know, traffic flow is important, but it should not be at the cost of people wherever people are present, that is pedestrians or anybody under human power on a skateboard or anything. Those places, whether they're intersections or arterials, need to be safe, and that requires slowing down cars. So I would really like to see our plan take much more of an approach in that direction than to follow the WFRC's plan to put more lanes on Highland Drive and other places. We need to focus on transit alternatives and realize that we're urbanizing, and there's going to be times when level of service becomes a D, E, or F, and drivers need to start thinking about when they drive, why they drive, and so it's my
part of that and how safe roads are. I mean, part of safer is always good. But I personally don't feel like our roads, as a general rule, are unsafe. We don't tend to have a high level of issues there, but that doesn't mean we can't work on it. I'm very pro traffic calming, very pro things. As we look at, I'm looking at the packet on page 52 of the PDF, which is page 16 of those cross sections, and that's where you actually start to, I think, if I understand what you said, if we look at those, that shows how a typical
That's the
lane
recommended.
local or a urban collector, these different things. Is there, I'm assuming there's a map in there that shows in our city which
Yes.
streets fall under which category? And
Yes,
what we
there
would
is.
ultimately like them to look at.
And that is. So it is one of the colorful ones. It's figure 5 shows the existing roadway network.
Yes.
And that's right after page 13, I believe, or 14.
Okay,
So it's page 15. That shows the classifications from urban core arterial down to urban collector.
okay.
And then the ones that are not labeled would be
Just the two lanes.
residential or, local collector.
So whether there's a painted bike lane or not, whether there's a center turn lane or not, whether there is.
Well, these show the road classification. You have residential, collector, and arterial. And then the cross sections themselves show from, you have on like a 2-lane urban collector, it has the 5-foot bike lane. So what these are showing are the proposed width and the proposed configuration of the road. So when we have development come in, they would either be required to make those frontage improvements potentially, or they would be required to give right of way to the city in the form of a dedication.
Do we know how many of our city streets currently comply to these?
Well, it's a good question. I know there are, I don't know specifically. No, I can't say I know.
I don't, that's kind of,
I mean, Fort
it would be
Union,
interesting to know how far away are we from this? Because this is an
Fort Union
ideal.
is a good example because Fort Union doesn't have the width of the asphalt in Fort Union is very narrowed and it's hard to
For what it's
provide
supposed to be doing.
the bike lane. And that's why we've been working with the planning department. You have the trail that we're proposing that would essentially provide an alternative form of transportation on Fort Union. Because it is listed as a bike route, but it doesn't necessarily provide adequate facilities all the way from Wasatch to Union Park. So, but some of these other roads, we've been able to get the bike lane in.
Okay, on figure 8, which is page 24 of that, those are traffic counts, I'm assuming, on each of the roads.
So this is the figure 8 is the existing volume.
Okay.
So this, and it also shows the existing level of service.
Yeah,
And that's
I understand the level
service.
of service, but I also understand that
Yeah, at this
Ellen's
level of
comment
service is just the roads. It's not, there wasn't an intersection analysis done. It's just the roads. There are recommendations for some of these intersections.
so, yeah, and Tim had told me page 29 is a list of active transportation projects. Multi-use paths, buffered lanes, shoulder bikeways, there's there's a whole bunch of them.
Yeah, 20, so if you go to the active transportation.
That's from the Mid-Valley
section,
Active Transportation Plan.
29 is the list of proposed active transportation projects. And then page 31 is the neighborhood connectivity. And it has examples of projects that can provide walkability or crossing of some of these larger roads. And figure 13 shows the locations of potential neighborhood connectivity projects. So if there are places that we would like to potentially have a project, this would be a great place to show it on the map.
And a project being like,
Yeah, well, Well, for start, I guess some examples would be like a hawk signal, a mid-block crosswalk. Anything that's gonna provide connection between neighborhoods across some of the wider roads.
Neighborhoods and parks and things of that nature.
Yeah.
Schools.
So the pedestrian pathways that we have that have been built around
Correct.
some of this,
Yeah.
those would be.
Ideas like that. So as you as a council, as you go through these, that's a very important, especially given what we're talking about here with Councilmember Burrell, is these connectivity to all of these assets that people want to get to where, so that's what that map shows. That's our first stab at it. We'd certainly like, you know, as you drive around and you look at these and you see places.
Look at
But
the
it needs to
improvements
be-
to some of those
Yeah,
pathways.
they
as
could be
well.
improvements to the pathways that exist, some ideas you can bring in there, like Adams mentioned, the Hawks. Improvements, mid blocks in some places. Now, a lot of times mid blocks aren't the best, but when you're connecting, for instance, parks to a neighborhood. Maybe the best
The one on
option.
Fort Union is
Yeah,
a good example.
Fort Union,
So
yeah.
can I just make sure I'm following this? When you talk about mid blocks, you're talking about crosswalks in the middle of a block?
So if you have a real long
Not
stretch
the
of road,
semaphore or-
instead of walking a quarter mile.
The city
over the
has,
street,
yeah,
picking it up.
the city has two mid-block crosswalks, one right up here by the skate park on Bengal Boulevard, and then there's one on Creek Road about, you know.
Yeah, next to the churches there.
Oh, yeah, on the church.
And
St.
those are
Thomas
over-
More.
So 7200 south by Ridgecrest doesn't count?
Well, that one is not that one I guess you call mid-block. What that one was is a.
I
speed
would,
table.
but you're the
You got
engineer.
the speed, I guess you could call that one as
So
well.
a speed table
It
is
was
a
built
speed
differently.
bump that has a larger,
A speed table's a ramp, it ramps up and then there's a flat top, right? And a speed bump is just a hump.
So that's why you can have then the
Yeah, you could
crosswalk
put the
printed,
crosswalk
painted
on
on top of the
speed table.
speed table.
Yeah, you can do that on a speed table, which is awfully nice.
Yes. Well, I'm completely in favor of, the council supporting a real analysis of these most dangerous areas with the support and direction, of course, of your staff. So that we can really look at how do we slow motorists down where there is danger for pedestrian, human powered mobility going on.
One of the things we have to understand, well, it depends how the council would view it, is in a transportation plan, we still have to take into account levels of service and what is the city or its residents comfortable with. If people are okay with levels of service E and F at intersections and whatnot, which I don't believe you'll find a lot that are based on my phone calls. We have to work around those things, and unless we change the whole, like I said, almost a philosophical way of looking at it. But as we go forward, I mean, we will certainly do the bidding of the council, whatever direction the council wishes us to go. But as we develop the transportation master plan, we do have to take into account the cars and the growth that will come with those. If we don't, then we almost create more of a safety hazard than what we have. Well, we can design the roads and the amenities that go on those roads with that, obviously the safety in mind. The types of crossings, the way the road is laid out, slowing them down, traffic calming. But at the same time, we still have to move a volume from A to B. And that's important to remember as we do this.
Let me ask, Sean and Doug, you have specific questions or items that have come up here? I want to make sure you get
There's a lot here. I really appreciate the work that's gone into this and understanding that the future is gonna come no matter what. And we have to plan accordingly, and it looks like this plan takes into consideration a lot of that future growth, which I really commend you for. The safety thing, I think, is built into every project, correct? So I believe that that's gonna be a part of everything. It should be a part of everything that we do. And I don't know if we have to hold things up because we don't see everything. Everything has to be listed and discussed, but because we don't see it as a council, we have to understand that some of that we'll see once the projects are put on paper and ready to come to us. We might not see it, far out before that happens, But eventually we will be able to see where those safety factors are included in these projects. And I'm pretty comfortable with knowing that everything is not going to be in here to the detail that we need it until some of these projects come to fruition.
I appreciate your, I guess, I'll shut up.
No.
Go
ahead.
ahead. Councilman.
You were pontificating for a second. I think that Matt brought up a very important point, is slowing things down to E or F is probably not a solution. Is that what you're saying? It's I get calls all the time of the light down on Fort Union and Highland. If it backs all the way up to those collector streets, then they can't even get out to get on that road. So I think they're going slow, there's no doubt, but the efficiency is not there. So I think we have to be careful and look at this through a lot of different lenses so that we can see what is both moving the traffic, which is the point of the roads, and making them safe. So it is a juggling act, I think.
Well, I think you can do both.
Yeah.
This just pop. You get off Kimball Junction and you drive into Park City. And you have cars that are going to be going 50, 60 miles an hour on that entire route, but they also have a multi-use path that parallels it that they spend, I don't even know how much money on. But that path, even though it's on a higher speed road, I would expect is actually probably very safe because there's a great separation. I mean, we don't have that kind of space here, but it's an example. It doesn't necessarily have to be this or that. If you've got the thing and you've got the will, you can actually do. You can accomplish both. And so our challenge is we have some pre-designed streets with pre-designed road widths that may not always allow us to do the ultimate, but we should always be moving towards.
What I love about, I'm looking right now, the roundabout. I always go through that and I slow down because somebody's going to be merging at one time or another. But the flow is so silky smooth. I just love that. So that's a good indication that, hey, that is traffic calming. It's effective and efficient, and it meets the purpose. And I don't know very many people, even people that didn't like the idea of it before concept or in concept, I think they would have a hard argument to say, I don't like that for XYZ reason.
I think you touch on something that's really important. We have to paint the picture of the future. And that's where people develop that comfort, is knowing that there's a clear picture of how things are going to look in the future. And a lot of times it's difficult to convey. You can't convey that message to everybody with clarity, even though you try your best. But I think that, we've done a good job here of, putting forth a plan that people can start to digest and then start to work on that clarity for each individual, because that's where we run into these funnels. So you get down to the bottom of the funnel, and it's just all these folks that just really can't picture things.
And we look at 400 pages and even us.
Exactly.
I mean, you have to eat this elephant one bite at a time, basically.
You really do. And we run into that, it's getting in psychology, we run into that thing where people are just trying to, gorge information, and they can't do that. I think it's with a really well planned out, documented plan, people have to slowly digest this and understand that this is the future. We're not talking about today, tomorrow, the next day, but we're talking about a long term. And I think that message has to be conveyed on a regular basis.
It is, and it's challenging. I mean, I have. I didn't know when we did our first general plan way back in the day, and we put residential office, we created the zone. And there was a lot of discussion on doing that on Highland Drive, a lot. What finally happened, but it took years and years and years for that to change to what it is now. Now, I wouldn't have seen, I don't know that I envisioned that completely. There's some things that I probably, now that I've seen it, I probably change a little bit, but it is, but it's something that, okay, like, yeah, I helped do that. And that's long-term impact. As we go through, because right now we're doing this maybe on the bike lane on Fort Union Boulevard. Granted, it's short. I mean, if you're on a bicyclist, what are you gonna spend 30 or 40 seconds on it? But it's a start, and with it being there, you can then look for other opportunities or as changes happen to say, well, yeah, this is here, but we need to expand it, we need to change it so that we can hopefully get it to where it's, you don't have to get out into the neighborhood to feel like you're not gonna get a snowplow pushing snow all over you.
Well, respectfully, as an active transportation user myself, I can tell you that bicyclists avoid Fort Union Boulevard and Highland Drive. And so I believe that we have to acknowledge the urbanization of Salt Lake County. We need to acknowledge that Cottonwood Heights is already a drive-through city for canyon recreationalists and commuters. And if we continue with our transportation planning in a similar way to what we've done over the years since incorporation, we will find that it is going to be this one more lane mentality is not going to keep Cottonwood Heights the kind of pleasant place. And we are not going to heighten active transportation unless our roadways are slower, because cyclists and walkers do not like to walk where cars are moving fast, and moving fast is anything over 35 miles an hour. So high volume, fast moving cars are not cohesive and do not complement, certainly do not incentivize the kind of active transportation that we're being told residents want to see in our city. So I respectfully believe that, you know, I respect all the comments that have been made at this table. And I can say that there has to be a new approach that really does incentivize transit coming into our city. Our city's transit has devolved in the 34 years I've lived here. We have less transit, bus transit. We need to really work on a regional as well as a citywide level. We need to be thinking of our neighboring cities and our Salt Lake partners to really envision a Cottonwood Heights that gives safe mobility for all users and encourages people making those 40% of trips made are less than 5 miles. And so many of those could be on foot or on cycle, because we have about 8 months every year where our weather is very mild. So I urge the council to get a vision for what we want to see for Cottonwood Heights and make sure that at the high level, as Councilman Newell has emphasized, that we are creating the vision, and then let the staff do their important expertise and work to execute that. Thank you.
John, you had said last time there's a significant culture shift that we need to take a place for a lot of that. And so, I mean, I do tend to agree with Matt. If we were running congested roads through the most normal, regular times that people were using them in the day, we would have some frustrations. And maybe that's one of the questions we could put on the transportation. You know, which way do you want to go? You know, how do we want it to look? I think the link you set out today, there were a couple of questions that could, you know, deal with that a little bit, but we've talked about doing something specific to transportation. How much traffic calming would you like to see? How many would you like us to go through and fix, upgrade, and improve, install sidewalks throughout the entire city, or would you not? If we happen to have space for a dedicated, detached, multi-use path on one of our roads, is that something you would like to see us get serious and fun? I can't think of one. Wasatch might have the width to do that, but then that's not our road. Anyway, I'm glad to see that there was a lot of the list of the active transportation projects in this, because at the very big front on the outset, I'm trying to find the objectives. We want to get people through the city. I think that's both good from a practical standpoint, but also on an emission standpoint. You don't want people congested. The traffic, the active transportation is in there, the connectivity from the neighborhood. I don't know how you all feel. I talked to Ellen about creating some alternative paths, actively working on finding, if you're going to be a bicyclist or a walker, maybe you don't have to use Fort Union Boulevard. Maybe it's just as easy if you did this, that, and the other, get you to the same place in about the same time, and signing those and putting those up there so
Well,
it's easy for people to get through.
And if
I
I
would love to
may,
put money towards that if it's not too big of a
well, and
project.
if I may interject, to your point, Councilman Bracken, this summer, the mayor was very excited, about legwork that I was doing in analyzing neighborhood bypass routes. He said, "Oh, Ellen, take the ball, run, work with the staff, make it happen." Well, about that same time, Andy Holka, who has, as I understood it, been at the head of the active transportation piece for the city. Of course, we lost him, and that's been a transitional challenge, I know, for the city staff. But I really do think something that we could do today or tomorrow, and I have met with Matt Shipp about this, and for relatively low expense. We could put together neighborhood bypass routes, the wayfinding signs associated with them, the sharrows on the road, these residential calm, quiet roads. It's very exciting. There's many ways. And there are also easements that our city manager has educated me on that have been in the works now for months or years to be able to create the little connections that a pedestrian or a cyclist, a skateboarder, could get where they're trying to go, whether it's to the Target stores or to different, parts of our city. And I really look forward to our retreat later this month and see if we can't come up with some kind of estimate on what kind of dollars we'd be looking at in 2023 to really take that neighborhood bypass route system.
Well, I think the first one is a map. I mean, you ride, and so you're a great resource for, this is how I could do it or I would do it. I mean, I can offer some suggestions, but I wouldn't be.
Well, and I think it's a
nearly as
community effort. I'm already identifying members
And
throughout
that, and
the
that's,
city.
and that's, and I think that's great. Are there other comments on this particular? I will give a shout out. If you head out to now I'm gonna lose it. What is the website? Wasatch Front Regional Council has a trip movements map. And this TAS that they got the data from, they're live on their website, and you can go in. What I really liked about the trip movements was you could take a particular area. Unfortunately, they do have Doug cut off from the rest of us, but you can click on a traffic area and find out how many trips are actually occurring in that complete total trips and where they end up. How many people are ending up in Provo? How many are ending up at the University of Utah? Things like that. That's active, and you can do it for 2019, 2020, 21. You can do it for weekday traffic only, if you want to do all traffic or just weekends, things like that. So there are some tools out there that are pretty amazing.
How is that collected? That information?
I think the short answer is Google and Apple.
I didn't know if they had cell phones or.
I think it's probably. I'm sure it's much broader than that. Please don't go. I don't know. When I asked, it was like, yeah, there's all kinds of things, but I think at the end of the result, it's possible because you have these devices, and it's the same way on maps. You can find out where's the traffic jam, where's this, that, and the other. That data is just compiled. It's just being able to put it all to use.
I know they can tell when I'm going to Costco. Because they know I need to bring my truck.
Anyway, all right.
Anyway,
Thank you, Adam and Matt. You're welcome back anytime. Okay, next on the list is, Fire Chief Riley Pilgrim. It's a new year.
It is a new
We can repent and move forward with things that you've been asking us to do and say we're, so far this year, we're perfect.
And likewise, me too. So I was supposed to do this at the last meeting and got caught at a station open house and mixed up my dates and didn't get here in time. So I'm actually pretty excited to be able to present this tonight. I'll try to give you the condensed version. We met with the mayor and with Tim about 6 weeks ago to kind of walk through this. What we have here is what we're calling our standards of cover. So Unified Fire Authority over the last, basically since 2018, we've been digging into data. We've been looking at all of our communities, looking at the risks associated uniquely to each community, which each community faces, and they are different throughout the county. And what we have here tonight is a Cottonwood Heights section of it. We have about a 600-page document that basically captures all the risk and kind of our response capabilities currently right now for the entire county for UFA. And so what I want to present to you tonight is the Cottonwood Heights component of that plan. And what we're really trying to do is seeing all this data when I do the quarterly report in a much smaller version. This is going to take a 3-year snapshot and kind of paint a picture of where we are and kind of where we want to go. And then that recommendation is going to go to our board of directors at hopefully one of our next meetings. Then they'll support or make a suggestion on what they feel is the most important to them as a board. And our resources, our strategic planning and our budgeting going forward will kind of go towards meeting those improvements or initiatives. So this is a document here. I'll try to go through this, highlight the pieces that really I feel are important to understand. So you can kind of grasp why we're looking at this, and then I'm definitely open to questions as we go through this. So what we did, and it's kind of hard to see, I think. So I apologize for the size of the document. But what we did, and this page isn't, I'll kind of, let's say, speak to the important ones. We basically looked at the community snapshot as a whole. With Cottonwood Heights, so looked at the population, the density, and the square mileage that we cover within the city, right? Just to make sure that we're resource-wise, we are where we need to be, and if we see any shortcomings based off of population and call volumes, we can start looking towards making improvements. What we see here is we're pretty in line with Cottonwood Heights. The population, give or take, population is pretty important to every community, but we're roughly at about, Cottonwood Heights is 33,500-ish or so. The important thing about this was taking it end of 2020. So the snapshot's about a year old now. We're working on updating that data now. But this just helps us kind of also see on our end how much workload we have, what we're potentially dealing with, to make sure our resources and our services are adequate for every community.
Can I ask you a quick question? You had us classified as urban. What would Salt Lake City?
Urban. So this is really simple. The population below 20,000 is rural. Population above is urban.
All right.
And that's only for the sake of some timelines that we'll get to in a minute. So it's just purely on population. So what we do is we portray in every community what the stations are that serve your community. So obviously we have station 110 and the resources that are there. So at the ladder and the ambulance, and then at 116, we have a 3-handed staffing with right now a peak load ambulance. So basically between December and March, depending on money and how busy the ski resorts are, we'll put an extra ambulance in Cottonwood Heights to relieve the burden on the other ambulances in the area, because they spend.
That's like a 6-wheel drive tracks, right?
We wish. It's our regular ambulance that traverses the canyons multiple times a day, depending on how busy the resorts are. Weekends are pretty insane. So peak load means they're there basically like a Thursday through Wednesday or Thursday through Monday, depending on what the workload looks like. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, they may not be there. But they primarily are just responding to the canyon, and they're busy. So it's not uncommon to have that ambulance go to the canyon and then have a second and even a third one following them up there to go to the resorts. So we're trying to reduce the burden on the crews that are here in the valley, but those are some busy places.
Are they able to get up there fairly
Yeah,
expeditiously. They
yeah,
use lights and sirens and
four-wheel
go.
drive, lights and sirens, we abide by all the laws with chains and traction control devices and
But you're able to get out of the main traffic. Line
yeah,
and-
sometimes. We've had some scenarios up there where we literally could not get out of the canyon with patients and had to deal with long-term patient care up there to get them somewhere else. Luckily, the resorts all have clinics. Some are, they vary in their capabilities, but usually we can house people in the clinics. What happens though is the clinics start stacking up with injuries and we gotta start moving people. And so the way 911 works right now is we kind of are responsible for that piece of it until what they could establish like an inter-facility agreement with hospitals and private ambulance. That's still a little ways out. So for the time being, we cover all that, and it's, as we've seen with, it's well discussed, right? The canyon, they're super busy, and we definitely feel part of that as well. So with this, we highlight not only the Cottonwood Heights stations, but what we look at is an 8-minute response to Cottonwood Heights, mostly for structure fires. So we have Holiday, they have a 4-person engine and a peak load ambulance there. And the stations, there's 2 in Sandy, the 2 in Midvale, and then Murray. So we have stations that are within 8 minutes that back us up. So when we get a significant call, a house fire, or we're on a call, these are the units that are typically going to respond in after 116 or 110 are committed on the call. Obviously 126 is pretty close. Murray's probably the next closest, and then 32 and 35 are 32 is not too far out. They're what 94 south and Highland, so it's not close, but it's close enough. There's a map that kind of shows their time frame as well. And then what we've done is we've broken down over the last 3 years just the call volumes. And when we talk about all of our calls in here, this combines both fire and EMS on that. So when I give you the quarterly report, what I saw with this and all our data is pretty accurate. We're averaging hit or miss about 550 calls a quarter. The majority of those are EMS calls. And we use this just as analytics. It tells us if the stations we have in the city are capable of handling that kind of call volume. There's some data that tells us we are. And then the next biggest thing is what we'll get into is kind of NFPA standard versus what we're trying to accomplish. This too is very common. We've seen the heat maps, and it kind of just shows over 2020 where the majority of our calls happen, and definitely in those higher density areas, right? Commercial or multi-unit housing. So is where we tend to have our highest demand. So this is the numbers that we kind of we're hitting into that we want to talk about is our urban and rural. You'll see this chart on the bottom. And basically what we have is the National Fire Protection Association, so NFPA. They're a national group. They establish guidelines for the fire service. Their standards, they're adopted by municipalities if they choose to do so. And they're kind of based off of what they would consider a best practice or ideal. But when we really dug into it, a lot of these numbers are extremely unrealistic. NFPA has a very high standard for responses. You can see their number on the bottom. There's very few, if any, departments in the country that are able to meet those. So like a call processing, we've made massive improvements with VAC, as you've seen with some of the police reporting with ours. We're getting better. There's still some work to do, but we used to be at a 2-minute time frame, and that's dropped dramatically, where that number was 2020 and here we are 21, 22. That number is going to be significantly different. NFPA recommends 1 minute, 4-second call processing time. So that's one that we can change. We can work with the VAC, and we UFA can't change that. We're applying pressure and continue to ask VAC to improve and help them be successful. That helps that number out, which drops our time frame significantly. The one number that we have direct impact over is the second one there. It's called the turnout time. The turnout time is basically from the time the tones go off in the station to the time the apparatus is moving. And so that we can impact by just emphasizing quicker responses. Our new station construction has minimized travel distances. So it's harder to change here. 110 is kind of actually a pretty good setup station over here on Fort Union, where you have dorms on one side, living quarters on the other. It's a single story, and literally within 30 seconds you can be out of any room in the station, almost into the engine. 116 is a little different because you're upstairs, So if you're sleeping, you gotta get up, and if you don't wanna go down the fire pole, which not everybody's a fan of, gotta go down the stairs, get out to the engine, that
It's
adds.
like it.
Yeah, they tend to, yeah. But that slows down our responses. So what we're trying to do is, and also we can't change that unless we build a new station. So it's just emphasizing quicker responses and being more responsive when those tones go off. So those first two, we can have a pretty decent impact on. The hard one is travel time, right? Because that's based off of a station location, which we'll show you a map in a second. B, traffic, which we have zero control over. And even with warning devices, sirens and lights and all that, we still can only get there so fast. And so travel time is a little bit harder. The only way you can really improve travel time is build more fire stations. And that's definitely not the most practical or cost efficient way of doing this. So we're going to focus highly on turnout times, things that we can do, and working with dispatch to improve their times. As you can see, the NFPA is, so this is 90th percentile. So what they're saying is basically 90% of their times will probably fall below those numbers. Or with us in Cottonwood Heights, 90% of our times are dropping or falling below those, which is nice. I think we do a pretty good job for how busy it can be, especially during the day. Our crews are very responsive with that. And the difference between the rural and urban is just in a rural setting, you typically have farther distances to travel, less stations, less resources. So that's why that number is kind of important, but in our situation, it doesn't matter quite as much. So our goal at Cheaper Shed is proposing is a 10% improvement on our turnout time, and working with VAC. You didn't necessarily give them a percentage because we can't really control what they're doing. But with UFA, we're going to work towards a 10% faster response time by improving in every area that we can, primarily turnout time. So that's kind of this chart. This chart depicts, and that just shows some of the data of alarm processing and first unit arrivals. Which, again, when I look at that, we are falling fairly well within that 90 percentile that's shown there, which is pretty nice. These break down the percentiles into more specifics. I don't want to get into those right now, but if there's more interest on this, I could add some of this or talk more about these pieces in the quarterly report. Hour day count, nothing here really stands out too out of ordinary. Our busiest time is definitely between 7 a.m. and about 6 p.m. and about 6 or 7 starts to taper off. And this is just 24 hours a day, just when those calls tend to come in. And that is a chart that we can use for a peak load. So if we start seeing a higher jump, we can add a peak load and fit it into the hours where we're seeing the most calls. So the data helps us make those types of decisions and make sure we have resources there in place. Call of the week or day of the week counts. We don't see a lot of abnormalities here. It's pretty standard. 7 days a week, we pretty much see daytime and nighttime. Fire and EMS calls are pretty regular. A canyon example would be like Brighton or Alta. You're going to see a spike typically on like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and a pretty big drop during the rest of the week. Well, here, pretty cut and dry across the board. And these are the numbers again that you're pretty familiar with seeing. This just puts them in a 3-year perspective. So these are basically our ALS and BLS transports and responses. Then our fires down below. That's our count over those 3 years. So we're not seeing a huge amount of fires here. I mean, 50 over 3 years isn't too concerning. It's about average for this type of population and what we have going on. And the transports for medical are also pretty regular over that time frame. This number helps us as well with kind of looking at our risk within the community. So what we did, and this is all surveyor data, it's taken from the county. It may not be 100% to the number, but what we do is we assess all the structures in Cottonwood Heights based off the size, and the size of the structure basically for us determines the risk that puts our personnel in when they respond on a structure fire. So not anything else other than structure fire. So like the maximum high risk for commercials over 100,000 square feet, and for residential it's 10,000 square feet, which there's not a lot of those even in Salt Lake County, but our average is at moderate to high for both commercial and residential. And again, that's just for us in planning and just understanding community risk, and for us, especially when it comes to fire.
And so that I'm clear, a structure fire is never a single station response.
No, and well, actually, the next 2 or 3 pages get into that. We have what are called
It's a
alarms.
softball.
Yeah, so the alarms are basically when we get a house fire, you automatically get like 3 engines, a ladder truck, ambulance, a battalion chief. And then depending on what the captain sees when they arrive, they can increase that to just adding a single unit or 2 or second alarm, third alarm, and that stacks stuff on there. We actually have a number here, and I'll get to that. I think that's pretty important. After this one. So this right here, I was showing you this, what I'm referring to, this is a 4-minute response time. And so on a good day, no traffic, roads just as are. This is where 116 can get to and 110 can get to. And that white circle in the middle is basically the Memorial Mountain Estates. And then it goes up to like Banbury down to Creek Road. Then over towards here, City Hall, just the rec center over here. It's kind of that gap. But on a good day, GIS data only, accounting for turns and intersections and all that. This is what a perfect response would be. But it also shows you Sandy, which we rely on for mutual aid, is definitely outside of that 4-minute response time. And that matters. That's the big difference as we get to this next page here. So thought this is pretty interesting. It shows Midvale does definitely just get into that western edge of Cottonwood Heights, which is nice. But relying on Sandy and Murray, it takes some more time, and just even geographical barriers, drainages, and some other features that they can't get around unless they drive all the way around them. This right here, not the best example. I think I can show you on this page real fast. Let's see here. This one, I hope this is a little better. So this page right here, just it shows a little more detail with each station in Cottonwood Heights. So right here, station 110, these maps don't even look good in the paper. These are kind of a hard one. So this green circle, the dark green is a 4-minute response, and that lighter green is 8-minute response. And again, it's taken in a perfect, no traffic, just GIS data only. That shows us where the apparatus should be able to get within a 4-minute and 8-minute response time. And also you'll see on the next page is this decreases dramatically when you actually use real-time data from our actual calls. 116, same thing. It shows 116 covering basically almost north and south completely in Cottonwood Heights and going towards the west. And then the 8-minute response is that light green.
Right, they have a quick question
Yeah.
for you. I noticed on Highland Drive and I-15, there's a new hotel that is just
yeah.
over the border. And also for the police, I imagine on many of those calls, we would probably respond with both because Holiday's way back to the north. So how do we work that? I know we have an interlocal agreement, but really Station 110 and our police are much closer than Holiday is.
Yeah, and that part of that with dispatch is there's 2 ways we dispatch. You have a zone. It's like 104 has a zone, and typically that would go almost to the edge of Holiday, Cottonwood Heights to meet. Sometimes we have some differences just because of this kind of data. It shows us where we can get quicker. And then if Cottonwood Heights is responding into a piece of Holiday, we track each one of those calls, and that goes towards what we call station utilization. So the easiest way to put it is if Cottonwood Heights is demanding more resource out of, or Holiday's demanding more resource out of Cottonwood Heights, and they're giving back, that actually changes the member fee percentage.
Okay, so that is adjusted.
Yeah, for us, I'm not sure how you guys will cover it, but we have a formula and calculation that will. So if Holiday's using you more than you're using your resources, and we're gonna have Holiday pay for that.
That's a concern because you want to make it fair.
Yeah.
It is a concern. It's more of a concern for fire
Right.
because they won't hold the call. They'll move somebody up and they'll go to it.
Right.
The area you're talking about, for the police, unless it's
Priority to.
if it's a real priority call, then of course we'll respond. Other than that, I mean, keep in mind, that's an interesting area. You have 3 municipalities, the 7-Eleven there, Murray,
Yeah.
the hotel, Holiday.
That's the devil's triangle.
It is, and then you walk 40 steps south and you're in Cottonwood.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So
Interesting.
So we use zones and we also use AVL. So if there's a unit that just is closer by GPS data only, dispatch will send them first. Typically, that's only the heavy apparatus, the engine. The ambulance will still come out of Holiday. or Cottonwood Heights or Murray. So the way we've been responding is closest heavy apparatus, which is a fire truck, and then the municipality ambulance, because a lot of cities generate revenue off of transports. So they don't want to, as weird as it sounds, they didn't want a closer ambulance taking a call if they had an ambulance available in their city. So UFA was taking a Murray call. We would be second in unless there's no one available. But the nice thing is about all of our heavy apparatus is we still have paramedics on everything. And so really the ambulance tends to be the ride, the transport piece to the hospital, but it's not as critical to get them there as quick as just getting a paramedic there. So as long as they're on the heavy apparatus, we're doing really well. So
Thanks for that clarification.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
so this is a pretty important one, and this is accurate. This is real-time information. So he showed you the 4 and 8 minutes in perfect world, right? This is where we are based off of 2020. Is that green shows we're within our 90th percentile. That's our 90th percentile, which is at 525. So kind of our practice. Outside of that is actual real life, where sometimes it takes us longer to get outside of that. So the further away we get, the more that percentile is increasing, right? So this is an interesting piece of data, and that's really just traffic and accessibility, right? Just trying to get around and maneuver through these areas. I'm actually pretty impressed with 110, with how busy that area is. That their span is a little bit broader than 116. But yeah, it also shows that Fort Union definitely provides them more access, right? Wider road in a lot of ways, and they can get around. So this is just normal. This isn't based on, this is just our typical call data right here that we're actually seeing. So the darker the colors get to the periphery, the longer the response time is.
Those are percentages.
Those are times. We can base those off the times. If I had the real map. I
Okay,
could
so that's
actually-
like 4, 5, 6.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking. Actually, on the bottom here, there is.
Oh, see
yeah,
this.
yeah, sorry.
There you go.
I was cutting off. You read it just perfect. So that shows you the 2, 3, 4, and then the time increases depending on that color. So that's pretty important for us, because when we're building new fire stations, like when we put in the one in Midvale and at Magna, there's a few going on in Harriman, we'll actually put the station on here first and see how that alters the response data, right? So that way we're not just guessing where a fire station goes. We can actually, with data, and Sandy's been involved, all the departments in the valley can kind of share their data with us. We can really do valley-wide best plan, right? Versus just we want a station here because there's land. This actually might help us find better places to put facilities. So, but this one is just our basic drive time, okay, with 90th percentiles. This next one is pretty important. It is what we call our residential fire effective response force. So the ERF, and basically what they've come up with is it takes 17 firefighters on scene to accomplish all the critical tasks to get the fire under control and in a certain amount of time. And so the longer it takes firefighters to get there, the more time it's going to take us to get this situation mitigated, right? And so this is pretty interesting. Again, for Cottonwood Heights, and you can see this again, this isn't us only, this is 17 firefighters. This includes Midvale, this includes Murray, probably includes Sandy, and how long it takes them to get there. So we can see the kind of more commercialized area with Midvale, Cottonwood Heights, you got Sandy, you got Murray. Really the 4 point, like there's 4 stations that just surround Fort Union and like 1100 East-ish, right up here, split a center. You got 4 stations that literally just are on the outside peripheries of that can get there pretty quick. Now in 116's case, and again, just like we mentioned the timeline down here on the bottom, 116 is a little more isolated, being on Wasatch Boulevard, and it takes time for Sandy to get up there and Sandy staffing. That's the other thing that's important to note on here is this depicts actual staffing levels as well.
Is 32 their farthest east station until you get way south?
Yeah, and then 35 right there. So 35 is in line almost with 116. It's like 8,000 south and 13th east. And then 32 is, like I said, I think it's 94th and Highland, or yeah, 94th and Highland. And so 116, just because they're up there a little bit farther off, it takes time.
Well, there's 2 more, but they're up the King. That would be
Yeah,
quite a
and
ride
those
down.
could come down too if we need to. Then Holiday gets there pretty quick, actually 112. which is a Mill Creek above 215, it's in Olympus Cove. That you can actually get over here relatively fast. And then Sandy, so the challenge with 116 and their staffing numbers, and then even what we talked about in here with 116 and their the staffing number there, it will take more time to get 17 firefighters just because just luck of the draw and how things are situated right now. The staffing in that area in particular is just lower than almost anywhere else in the valley. And so that's just something to be aware of. And this data, so it's not like me or us saying, oh, we need this guy because this shows the numbers, which is pretty interesting.
This is, sorry, random
Yeah, no
question.
problem.
When you have power outages like happened over this last storm, do you see a spike typically in calls or fires, or does it not make a?
No, what we actually ended up spending a lot of time on is power line fires. So a lot of times when the snow goes away, the dust starts blowing, all this stuff starts happening. Then once you get the water and the dust on the power lines, we almost regularly get power line fires on almost any big winter storm, and that tree branches are falling and other things happen. We'll get called to a power line fire where Rocky Mountain Power is an hour away because they're working on another problem. And so our crew will typically sit there and watch it, so it's not a hazard, but it ties them up, right? So then you got a crew stuck on this call and other stuff is going on. And I've been when I worked out here, especially like I wouldn't be uncommon to have 3 or 4 of those popping up. And we'll just try to do what we can to handle those, but they can definitely draw resources. If we know they're coming, the fire doesn't look severe, we can actually just leave it open and go to something more important. But there are some that burn a lot of the pole out, or the connection on the wires are burned and it's falling off the pole. Those are definitely problems. So, but this, I like this example. It definitely just shows, I mean, like I say, this is actual data. It's got all the staffing, it's got all the response times, real life information, which is really helpful for us when we're making decisions on where we want to make requests for additional manpower or person power or ambulances or apparatus or whatever it is.
Have there been incidents in our city, let's say over the last 10 or 15 years, where because the response time was greater than 12 minutes, either a home was lost or a life was lost or a serious injury?
I don't have that off the top of my head. The last page shows the dollar amount of loss. I don't believe there's been a fatality in Cottonwood Heights on it.
We've had a couple homes that they're
Yeah.
going just over here. There's been a couple homes that have gone pretty bad.
But life loss, I think it's you.
I don't know if that was due to time response or just.
There's so many things that factor into that. It's unfair to blame time specifically for that or people, but that does equate into it, right? Obviously, the longer it takes us to get there, the worse the problem is going to be. And then have less people that are deal with those problems, it makes it a little more challenging. So I feel like we've been pretty fortunate. A lot of it's education, a lot of it is good practices and response and people getting out of their houses if something bad happens. But I don't, it's just you never know. So this is for house fires only, it's residential fires. The next one is for commercial fires, and this takes actually 28 firefighters. So in Cottonwood Heights, so to go back, our 90th percentile in house fires, 824, which I believe NFPA, if I go back, I don't want to go too far here. NFPA puts it at, sorry, I'm trying to get on sick here. NFPA puts us at, no, place is farther back than I thought. It'll put us at, so again, NFPA's recommendation for those on a fire 624, which is really challenging. And we're 2 minutes beyond that. And so if we can improve our turnout time and our call processing, we might actually be able to get within a minute and a half of that. And that's pretty awesome. Like given where we're at and kind of what we're working with. So let me go back to where we were here. So 28 firefighters. So this one, our 90th percentile is 950. So it's about a minute and 25 seconds longer. Now you'll notice here, this is 28 firefighters, which is hard. When we look at this map throughout the entire valley, this is pretty common. It is challenging to get 28 firefighters on the scene of fire quickly. So, because now we're pulling from almost every station around here, as well as outside of that. The thing to remember is it's not uncommon to have 35 or 126 on another call. 110 gets a commercial fire, so now we have to pull resources from further out. And so anywhere in the valley, this is a challenge. But it does, again, the effective fire force for a commercial fire is 28 firefighters. You can see luckily there's not a lot of commercial over there, especially in 116 there. There is down obviously towards Fort Union, Wasatch. But you know, further south we go, there's only a few small areas where we run into that. So to highlight again, this is a common challenge throughout the valley. And this even depicts here upwards of 15 minutes to the slowest spot. Most of these still fall in, most of this lighter color, we're still at 9 to 10 minutes, which you know doesn't seem fast, but maybe it does right when I look at it as an event, because I think you get there quicker, but that's you know, getting that much apparatus and that much personnel there that quick is quite a task. So the other thing that we look at just to help us plan is just the different risks that each community faces. So infrastructure on transportation, and right here it's over linear miles of roadway. So we didn't come up with the risk matrix. We had someone in emergency management use some pretty common categorizations of this in the matrix. There are actually a few dams in Cottonwood Heights. They're all small, low flow, not high issue dams like that would cause us concern. It's just something to be aware of. And also we're on the fault line up here, so that's an issue. Unreinforced masonry, almost 70% of Salt Lake County at one point was unreinforced masonry, which is basically brick structures, right? Homes. Most homes, a lot of businesses were built in the 70s. A lot of that's unreinforced masonry. They use cinder blocks or bricks or veneer on the front, but they don't have a lot of seismic stability. So for us, that's a concern. If we get a big earthquake, you know, we're going to see a pretty significant level of damage with the unreinforced masonry. That's common throughout the entire county. There are definitely some interface risk, and again, this is all just based off of. We have some other calculations and guidance that we use to do that. Then the 100,000 foot structures, typically commercial. There are a few high risk areas like the water treatment facility, plants and fracs there that store chemicals or things that we just need to be aware of. But I heard nothing that's too out of the ordinary, stuff that now that we're very aware of it, we can also help plan and be prepared for something happens in those areas. And then this just kind of gives a narrative of how we got to the risk. So and I'll share this PowerPoint with Paula. She can send it out. You know, within Cottonwood Heights, the natural hazards are obviously interface fires. We've got a few pockets that present some concern, and then you know, avalanches aren't too big of a deal until we get up the canyon. Tier 2 sites just are a storage of hazardous materials. It's nothing crazy, even like carbon dioxide at a gas station where they carbonate your drinks falls into a tier 2 reporting. It's just a certain amount of storage on the facility. You have to report it. And so there's a whole category of hazardous materials. And so when people see this, they think there's like something a little more hazardous or dangerous. More often than not, it's basic stuff that we deal with day in, day out. We go to a restaurant, a gas station, a Home Depot, but the quantity of stuff they have there with paint and all that all classifies in there. So no hospitals are standalone, and then I think we got the schools right. So 5 elementaries, 1 middle school, and then the 1 high school within city boundaries. And then target hazards are areas that we kind of have specific focus on because they have a higher quantity of hazardous materials. So the water district, treatment plants, and then pracs there. Not that it's it is a concern if there's an emergency there, but general day-to-day stuff, it's just good to know it's there. So when we show up, we kind of are prepared to deal with that. And this just is a map that shows where all those hazards are. Then to Ellen's question. So right here for the last 5 years, so 2015 to 2020, no fatalities. And the property loss is probably low. So the way property loss is typically calculated is we show up, our captain or the incident commander makes a determination off the top of their head. Based off of just experience, and they'll plug in a number, and honestly, that isn't always done well. So the property loss, to your point, they're having several house fires. I would probably dare guess it's a little bit higher than that. But I don't know this much off, right? But that's something that we're working on refining to make sure we're training our people to accurately assess. And it's hard, I mean, it's like being a home appraiser, you have to show up and just make your best guess on what was inside the house, and in today's market, what that's damage is going to cost. And then insurance companies come in and make the actual determination. We actually don't get that. This is just information off of our reports and not theirs. And then this just breaks down the regional services within UFA. So our battalion chiefs are shared throughout the valley. They're strategically placed to provide oversight and complex incident management oversight. We have heavy rescue companies or hazmat companies. So one's in 126, and then our heavy rescue closest one is probably in Taylorsville. It's station 117, which is just off of 215, and Redwood Roadish is their closest access here. So they're probably 10 or 12 minutes out. And they're typically only called on incidents where our people here can't get them out. Our truck company here, 110, has extrication equipment and most of the stuff that they need to get somebody out of a bad crash, but it's really challenging when you call them these groups. So then 116 is actually home to one of our water rescue teams, just based off of the Canyon responses and Cottonwood Creek in particular. 116 does house water rescue trained personnel, so they can be swift water and regular water. That doesn't matter. So lakes, ponds, whichever, but most of their concentration spent on doing swift water, so streams, creeks, rivers, and that for us gets really busy in the late spring when that runoff starts coming down the mountain. Then wildland division, these are all resources available to that we use here at Cottonwood Heights. Wildland, our investigations for arsons or bomb calls or anything like that. So really the pages that, again, I just want to reinforce are the effective fire responses, our turnout time data, the things that we want to improve on. I think Chief Burchett's going to present. This has gone to all the city councils that are municipalities part of UFA, and the board of directors are giving some guidance on what we would like to accomplish, which is again an overall 10% improvement. Our response times are getting there a little bit quicker, which honestly right now that has a zero budget impact. It's not going to cost anything. It's just stuff we can improve internally with just some protocols and some different guidelines and emphasis on how important this is. So right now our recommendation to the board is just to move forward with this on a 10% improvement. And then we're actually going to start working on an update to this now, since this data is from 2020 and there's been some big changes with dispatch and the way that we're going. And I'm optimistic that we're going to see some pretty positive changes with our response times. Again, the one thing, like I said, I would just highlight is that effective fire force. And even though adding one person doesn't seem like a lot, if that's in the cards or that's something that we're going to look at as a city, that's definitely a worthwhile investment endeavor, because it will definitely improve the service level up there with efficiency, safety. As we've seen on those house fires, luckily we've had other crews get there in time or citizens step in to help out, but we can't emphasize just the importance of those positions. So it's definitely something to consider as we keep moving forward. So Tim, I don't know if there's anything else you want me to share, and thoughts, any questions?
No, we appreciated the time. We sat down with Riley and Chief Burchett and had a talk about all this, and we appreciate the information, and we had questions on the data, and I know that's something that you're looking at. So related to the time of that data. So
yeah, we're constantly trying to improve that.
If things go well, you won't have to talk that much the rest of the year.
That's fingers crossed, right?
Thank you. But no, thank you very much. The next item is the administrative year-end review. Tim did send this out in the packet, but he said that there was a few things he wanted to go over, highlight, just so that we're aware of it as we head towards starting the budget process.
yeah, so I did send this out, and I will just highlight some of the highlights. First of all, I want to just mention that we working for Cottonwood Heights and being part of this organization, and especially all of the employees, I am so grateful for the services that they provide. Every single department, from public safety and police to public works, community economic development, culture, human resources and records and finance. There's a lot that goes on in our community, a lot of things that we work towards. And I will say that it's really a privilege to be a part of this organization and to work with all the employees. And we have wonderful, wonderful employees that are very competent, very professional, and do great work. And so it's kind of an exciting time at the end of the year to reflect on all that we've accomplished. And that's what this report does. And so let me just highlight a few things. I don't want to, you've probably read through it. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I think it's very important to reflect on what we've done. I also recognize there's always areas of improvement. That's something that we constantly work towards as department heads that I work with. We're constantly working towards improving, but overall, I'm very pleased with what has been accomplished. So let me just highlight a few things, and we have a brief PowerPoint here. It's only about 85 pages, so I'll get through it as quickly as I can. I always joke with
That's
that.
fine if you want people to just distribute the dinner.
Right, right.
It's hilarious.
Yeah, yeah.
But
So this year we implemented a monthly employee newsletter. I send that out to all of you each month. As soon as I send it to staff, it's about 1 page. It just highlights what is going on. I provide a brief article in that. If you want to read a very philosophical article, read the one in December. It's titled Givers of Civilization. It's from some of my readings, but our employees are givers of civilization. They do important work that really help enhance the quality of life of our individuals. We've implemented that. We provide at least every other day social media updates. We try not to inundate people with social media, but at least every other day we are updating them on issues. We're working on a promotional video. The mayor really wanted to have a promotional video. We're working on that. We've had a number of people interviewed, and that is something that we'll be bringing to you here in the next couple of months for you to review. I provide weekly reports, the council communications every Friday afternoon to each of you. I have never missed a week, so I'm grateful for that record. Hopefully it won't end. And so anyway, we provide that. Budget preparation, you know all of the efforts on that. Community survey, implementing city council directives. When we talk at the retreat in a few weeks, we will talk about what we were able to implement with the council directives. And then legislative policy work, that's something that's gearing up again for the legislative session, but we've done a lot of work in that. And then we're preparing, we did the mayor and council retreat last year. We're preparing for the next one. And every city employee received an evaluation this past year, which is something that we accomplished. On the community economic development side of things, 151 total land use applications, 787 building permits, 2,257, I believe, inspections completed. That's a little off right there. And then we were able to obtain some grant and some funding for the Fort Union bike lanes, which is really exciting. The Mid-Valley Active Transportation Plan was adopted by the council, which we spent a lot of time with you on, but our staff prepared a lot with that. City Hall solar installation has been completed, and then the Waterwise landscaping ordinance was adopted. These ordinances and grants are things that take a lot of time and a lot of effort. And so when we adopt them and get them completed, it's something that's really great. Our police department, one of the great things that we've been able to do, and it's because of the leadership we have with Chief Russo and the way that we've worked in our community and with the department, we've been able to really retain staffing levels. We don't have a lot of turnover, and that's been very good during this time. And so we've been able to really retain that, which is a compliment to Chief Russo and what we've accomplished there. We've improved community relations, and that's something that we're going to continue to do. But there are a number of things that we've implemented, including training and intervention responses. We developed specialized training for officers on intervention response to autism spectrum disorder and mental health issues. And then we work closely with the Utah Autism Awareness Foundation and develop curriculum related to that. The great part of it kind of culminated with a great event that we had with a barbecue with that organization that we hosted here. And so the community relations and the work on intervention has been a great success this past year. Our canine dog work, the teams that we have. If you've ever, I hope that all of you have seen the work that they do. I've been with Chief Russo at a number of the DARE graduations where there were demonstrations. But we have, in my opinion, the best canine unit in the whole state. And we won an award this year on narcotics detection, which was the #1 in the state based on the Utah Officers Peace Association competition. And so we do great work in that area. Emergency management, we were able to hold a number of events, quarterly trainings, and really made some good progress in that area. And then school security training is something that we emphasized this past year. All of our officers have the opportunity to go into the schools, so they know the layout, they know the issues, and we provided training in coordination with the school district on that. So those are all things that we were able to do with the police department. Public Works, we were able to get some grants related to Wasatch Front Regional grants on pavement management. We completed year 4 of the 5-year program. Capital projects, big ones occurred this past year, the Bengal Boulevard roundabout, as well as the Ferguson Canyon Trail, Ferguson Park. And then we were able to survey close to 3,000 manholes with GIS data related to our storm drain. Chip seal improvements, 924,000 square feet, 132 tons of leveling, surface maintenance of 1.8 million square feet of slurry seal, crack seal improvements on 90 tons of material were laid out over this past year. So a great amount of work. And I will just also emphasize, both with Public Works and police, the snow removal that we are involved in, that these past storms have been very intensive, very hard. I had the opportunity to go and with Matt and see some of our staff after one of the last storms. And those are very tiring days and nights, a lot of work, a lot of effort. And I appreciate what they do, as well as our police department and the emergency response that we have related to those issues. So thank you to our staff for the heavy lifting that occurred, especially in the last 48 hours. Records, culture, and human resources. We had a number of government records requests that and bidding processes that we went through, hired and onboarded 28 new employees, the Willy Wonka production. And that's not just the production during the 3 or 4 nights that it occurs or week or two. It's everything that happens in preparation for that was huge. We had great events, the Bunny Hop, Bark in the Park, Butler Days events, and then the Christmas events. You all know the intense time, especially on Butlerville Days, with this department and their staff, as well as our Public Works and Police Department helping with that. We're able to secure grants related to the Utah Division of Arts and Museum and Zoo Arts and Parks as well. And then our finance and information technology. I've sent to you the financial awards that we've received again this past year. And it's commendable, the efforts that they put forth related to budget and financial assessments. So we continually receive the highest ranks related to the awards related to this. We've also been able to implement additional bonding this past year. And one of the big things that is really huge is cyber training and cyber security implementation. We're going to be talking at the retreat about some of the things that we've been able to implement this past year that's really huge. And I just sent to you, we were very proactive in reaching out to the state. They offered an opportunity for us to have services, their audit services, come in and see free of charge and see how we're doing from a cybersecurity perspective. And that will be starting in just the next week or two. And it's because of our proactive efforts saying, we want you to come in and assess our community, but we've been able to implement some important things. So this is just highlights of what we've done, but they are great highlights. I've asked the department heads to submit kind of the highlights. If I listed everything that was accomplished in the city, it would be 85 slides probably. But I just want to emphasize that I really feel our staff are givers of civilization, as I stated in that article. And that we really strive to better the community of Cottonwood Heights as staff and as with the work that we do. And I appreciate the work of our staff in bettering our community, and they do a lot of good in that area. So that's all I have to say, unless there's something you want to ask me.
No, I would echo that. I think we all appreciate what staff does. I appreciate you, Tim, that leadership. What one of the first exercises they do with the newbie Masters of Public Administration students is say, where's government touched your life today? And it's basically at the city level. It's you turned on the power, you got the water, you drove on the road, you did all of these things. And so I don't think that's a stretch to say it's the things that happen here, you know, that make life better. Every now and then something, you know, a senator will have an impact on your life, other than just you getting upset or cheering them on. But the day-to-day things are really the staff. So thanks for that.
Yeah, and I just want to, I need to mention our department heads, every one of them. Mike Johnson, Matt Schiff, Scott Jurgis, Robbie Russo, Paula Melger. Riley, appreciate all that you do with UFA. Shane Topham with our legal counsel and attorney work. They are a great group and do so much good and are such great leaders. So I truly appreciate each one of them and their efforts.
All right. As a reminder, City Hall will be closed on the 16th of January. The 18th, 2 days after that, is the Utah League of Cities and Towns Day with the Legislature. There's a film festival on January 21st. And then also Monday, February 20th is President's Day. So one thing that isn't on here yet, I'll just bring it up because I deal with the youth council. The first Thursday in March, they would like to do a dinner with the mayor and council. I think it's the second, something like that.
It is the second, yes.
So if you can maybe put that aside, that's usually the kids really enjoy it. Chance to just interact, talk, and do things. So that is coming up. I am not aware of any items we have for a closed session, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn our work session until we go to our business meeting.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Apparently without a real gavel, without a real mayor power. I think
We never
all
use